everybody, it's Chris, and today I want to talk to you all about azaleas, like this lovely azalea we have here. Now this one is a reblooming azalea because you may be able to tell from the rest of the background that we are in the fall. This is very early November, mid-November actually, of 2024, and most of the time azaleas historically are spring blooming plants. However, some decades ago they started developing in the early 2000s reblooming azaleas. The first line was called the Encore azaleas, and later after that there's other brands, other breeders, other plant IP holders that are coming out with their own lines of reblooming azaleas. So nowadays, if you have an azalea that you're buying at the store, always look for a rebloomer. They're worth it, but most of them are going to be reblooming. So you'll have a wonderful show in the spring, mid-spring, a little bit after forsythias and everything like that will bloom, and then in the fall you'll have a lovely show again where the plant will get completely covered in blossoms, like you see this one here. This one's been in the ground 3 or 4 years so far, and it's doing great. In fact, the reblooming azaleas are so much nicer than the older azaleas that will only bloom once a year. I ripped out a hedge that was 6 or 7 years old just a few weeks ago. I ripped the entire hedge out, these azaleas, because I was bored with them. They were Walmart azaleas, I'll be honest. They were Walmart azaleas. I got them on clearance 7 years ago, planted a hedge of them, but they just had the flower size, the color, the show that I wanted. So I ripped the entire row of Walmart azaleas out and replaced it with brand new, and the variety is called Epic Pink Mundo, Perfecto Mundo Epic Pink azaleas. So this azalea that I replaced this hedge with has extra large blossoms that are double, meaning that there's a double layer of petals, and that it's a rebloomer as well. And it's a brand new variety. It was just released this year or last year. So I replaced this old hedge, even though I had to sacrifice 7 years of growth, because long term I wanted a plant with better genetics in that spot. And right now the plants you're buying at the garden centers are going to have better genetics than the azaleas you had before. So let's walk around and let's talk some more about azaleas, where you should plant them, if you should plant them, how you should plant them, and how to get the best use out of them. So stay tuned for that. All right, everybody, this right now currently is my #1 azalea on my property, is providing the best show. This is an Encore azalea, and I got this 2 to 3 years ago, probably as a 1-gallon pot, so you can see it's already put on some really good growth here. It's in a raised bed that I built off just some stone I found around the property to line my path here by my pond. And the raised bed part's important. You can hear my chickens in the background. They always like being in videos. So azaleas, more than anything else, they want good drainage. They are known often to be shade-loving plants. However, they also do fine in sunlight. Like right here, this is clearly getting a lot of sun. But historically speaking, people have thought about azaleas as being woodland shade plants in its native range here in the southeastern United States, and azaleas are native. They often grow in the understory of a forest, so they take dappled sunlight, they take shade, and they do fine in those situations. However, most of the time, maybe not most of the time, but a lot of the times in our gardens at home, our shady spot, our dark spot, the north side of the house, the east side of the house, somewhere that's just not getting a lot of sun, it also tends to be a little damp. And what you'll notice is, especially in the winter time, your azaleas are dying or they are declining in health. And you assume it's cold because it's wintertime, but it's not. It's not the cold that will kill an azalea if you're planting in the appropriate zone. What's going to kill an azalea is going to be the winter wetness and lack of drainage. They do not like having wet feet. They do not like waterlogged soils. And we get more precipitation during the winter, and the precipitation sits in the soil longer. It doesn't evaporate because temperatures are cooler. And all that wetness around the roots of the azalea will cause root rot, and they will die and decline for those reasons. So azaleas do best in a raised bed or on a slope, anywhere with good drainage, So if you have a slope in the shade, or like again, they can do fine in sun, generally speaking, but if you have a slope or a dry area where it drains pretty good, plant your azaleas there. If you have a shady spot that does not drain well, you want something flowering, plant a hydrangea. Hydrangeas like it a little wet, azaleas like it dry. Remember that rule, and your plants will be a lot healthier, and they'll thank you for it. So this azalea here, as I said, one of the top ones on my property, and you can see overall this year, I don't know if it's the climate or rainfall or what we had. We had an extreme drought late summer into early fall, and we finally got some rain, and it could be the drought that did it, because azaleas do like it a little dry. But all around town here in Tennessee, I've noticed lots of azaleas really putting on a good fall show this year, more so than other years. So something that we can enjoy right now, and it just makes me want to plant more of them or make a video about them, which is what I'm doing. Just really excited about them. I'm excited to plant more around my property because I'm just loving the show that they're putting on. So this one, like as I said, this is an encore azalea. It is the most floriferous one on my property right now. You can tell probably that it's got some two-tone petals on it. It's got some petals that are more white and some petals that are more pink, and that's just the genetics of this variety here. And they like it well drained, and they like it shady, partial sun, to full sun even sometimes, as long as it's not super hot. It does need some water. Deer will eat them in the middle of winter if there's nothing else for the deer to eat. However, as a native, they've grown up with deer, they've evolved with deer, and so generally speaking, deer will not destroy the plant. But if there's nothing else at all for the deer to eat in the middle of winter, they will eat almost anything, and azaleas are included in almost anything. So I'll show you a couple more azaleas around my property, and we can talk a little more about them and planting ideas and where they're best to go. This here is not an azalea. This is a rhododendron. Rhododendron and azaleas are in the same family. You can consider them the same plant, but there are some subtle differences. One easy way to recognize the differences is that a rhododendron is going to have larger leaves. So you can see the leaves on this plant are much larger. The other thing that you can see here is that this plant, this rhododendron, which again, azalea family, I'm categorizing them the same, is in decline. You can see we've lost leaves here. This branch is still going okay, but this is not happy. It's not doing well here, and you can even feel like, look, it's not secured to the ground very well, despite being in the ground for years. And the reason that is because, as I was just speaking, this plant does not like wet soil. Now, this north side of my house gets some drainage off the roof right here that comes down and sits in the soil, and it stays very, very wet in here. And so this rhododendron is in decline and is experiencing significant root rot, which is why it's not firmly attached to the soil anymore. Because the soil is just too moist right here. So if I want to save this plant, I'm going to need to move it to somewhere that's a lot drier and gets better drainage. This spring, I planted these red Perfecto Mundo reblooming azaleas here in this little corner area with a Japanese maple. It's an Emperor 1 Japanese maple, one of the standard red upright ones. And it provides some degree, this is the north side as well, so it's shady, but in the middle of summer the sun does come in from this side, so they do get sun in June, July, those time periods. But as you can see here, I've planted 5 little azaleas, and they're blooming nicely, but within a few years they will fill this entire space, and this entire space will be one giant mass planting of azaleas that will bloom red. And I'm also very excited about this area as well. And it's about patience. And you can buy small plants, you can afford more if you can buy them small, and just wait for them to grow and get big. This is a part of my property I am really excited about. I got my forest path here going off into a clearing I've made. And I've lined it with boxwood, but I filled the entire area with Perfecto Mundo double purple azaleas. That's the variety name. We can look at one right here really close. I got 30 or 40 of these, and so I bought small ones because it's a lot of money if I were to buy big ones. And I'm patient. I'm a patient gardener, and I'll give them time to grow. And I have them all planted from here to that tree. I have a red bud in the middle. It's lost its leaves already for the winter. It's a fire or a flamethrower red bud. It's a beautiful plant. But in a few years, this entire area will be filled with azaleas in bloom, 3 to 4 feet high, and it's just going to be a gorgeous mass planting of azaleas, and I'm really excited to see how it turns out. I've lined this with landscape fabric. Landscape fabric is a little controversial. Some people like it, some people don't. I use it in specific circumstances. I will not use landscape fabric in areas where I am going to be planting perennial or something that will spread. I will only use it in areas where I am planting shrubs or trees that are never going to spread with runners or grow into a clump. They're always just going to have their stem sticking up out of the ground and look like that. So this way, this was a forest soil. I covered it. I cleared off the vegetation. I covered it with the fabric. If I did not cover with the fabric, I'd be having a significant weed problem, and that's what I was trying to avoid. I've not decided how I will mulch this yet. I usually don't like using wood mulch over fabric, because wood mulch over fabric eventually becomes soil over fabric, and then weeds will just grow on top of the fabric. So I will probably stone mulch this, and yes, I am aware that stone mulch does not add anything to the soil, and I'm okay with that. In certain circumstances, for good landscaping design, sometimes I think stone mulch is going to be appropriate, and this is one of those cases. But you can see here we have shade by this it's not quite fully grown, but it's a lovely maple tree. We have a larger red bud. We have a Carolina sapphire cypress. So overall, this area is getting dappled shade with a mix of direct sunlight from this direction during certain times of the year. So the azaleas will be very happy here, and I just can't wait for them to get bigger. Now across the trail from this, where you can see my chickens, I have a mass planting of hydrangeas. And as you can tell, this is also shaded by an oak tree here. So this is shaded, and on paper, hydrangeas should be happy here. However, as I was saying earlier, hydrangeas do not like it dry. They need moisture to grow. And so the hydrangeas in here have consistently been poor performers for me, and I have to run the sprinklers out here when we have droughts, and even if they've been established for years, it's been hard to get the performance and the blooming that I want out of these hydrangeas. So what I've done, I'm keeping the hydrangeas because I've invested in them. But what I've done is I've gone through, and between staggered each hydrangea, I've planted a wee little baby azalea. You can see this one here in bloom. A wee little baby azalea, so that eventually the azaleas will grow and they will offset the hydrangeas, and hopefully when the hydrangeas aren't performing well and giving me the flowers that I want, the azaleas will do so instead. Now granted, these ones are really small. I didn't pay a lot for these. I got them for pretty cheap, so they're small ones. But give them a couple years, they'll put on some size, and they'll start giving out a good show of flowers. So I'm also excited for that. And this overall, by this pathway, is going to be my azalea showpiece area of my yard. Not all azaleas are evergreen. Some azaleas are deciduous. What I have here is I have what's known as a flame azalea. Now most azaleas are going to only come in your whites, your pinks, your purples, sometimes reds. If you want yellows and oranges, you have to go to a different variety, which is a deciduous variety called a flame azalea. So these guys will lose their leaves, and this one has lost its leaves due to drought. You can see I still have the plant tag on it here. Isn't it a beautiful flower color though? These will not rebloom typically in the fall. They will only a spring bloom, and they bloom very early spring before they leaf out. So it just will be a plant that's completely covered in these orangish yellow hot colors, and they will just bloom out for you, and they're gorgeous. These can get quite big. I've seen them 8-10 feet tall at botanical gardens. I hope this one gets big here. I'm trying to fill this entire space with it, but It's not much to look at right now because of the drought we've had, and then also because it's fall, so it's lost some of its foliage. But it will leaf back out in the spring and bloom and put on a lovely show. So flame azaleas are a completely different category. They're deciduous. And they're not going to be used in the same way as the evergreen azaleas. As far as keeping the leaves on, you can do a nice hedge with winter interest. Can't really do that with the flame ones, but they make a great focal point, a statement piece in the garden, providing this bright orange flowering bush in a time of year where not much else is blooming. This circle bed on my property sits in the middle of my driveway. I have a lovely sculpture here I bought, and I've gone through a lot of different iterations with what I want this bed to be. I had an entire hedge of knockout roses going all the way around the circumference of this bed, and I had to rip them out because they got the rose rosette virus disease, and they had to all be dug up, terminated, and burnt. If you don't know about that, it's a disease that affects roses and results in the new growth looking red and twisted. That's the telltale sign. It's actually spread by mites that will, bite the infected rose, then blow on the wind over to the next plant and bite that plant and spread the disease that way, which is why you have to dispose of the refuse when you dig them out. I replaced all of the knockout roses with these Weigellas. The deer have been nibbling on these. This is a Sonic Bloom Pink Weigella. It is a lovely plant. It blooms profusely, completely covered in pink blossoms in the spring. But not a lot of interest the rest of the year. There's some, you can see one late in bloom here. On some new growth, it will continue to bloom all summer long, but its big show is in the spring, and then it's deciduous, so it loses leaves. Behind it, I've planted some barberry. I've got some golden barberry and some red barberry for visual contrast of different foliage colors, which is always smart in garden design. However, barberry is also deciduous. So I'm stuck with this problem of I have everything in this bed now being deciduous, and in the wintertime it looks like sticks. And this is the front formal bed in the front of my house. So what I'm thinking about doing is replacing, or at least alternating with the Weigella, using azaleas all around the border of this bed, so that in the winter there's still some degree of interest, some degree of structure with the leaves still on the azaleas plants because they are evergreen. And then of course I'll also get the flower show in spring and in fall, and I think it will be an improvement over what's in here now. So this, I don't have any azaleas to show you here, but this is a great example of where they would be a great use. When you want to hedge something, to border something, and you want 3-4 seasons of interest. You don't want to rely on something deciduous that's going to just look like sticks in the winter, and you want flowers as often as you can in that permanent planting with evergreen leaves. Honestly, the category or the Venn diagram of what's evergreen and what flowers is very small. There's very few plants that are evergreen and put on a big flowery show. Azaleas are one of them, and that's why they're so popular in the garden, and that's why I want to add them to this bed here as well. Let's start over. Hey everybody, so this here is my project of the week that I'm currently working on. This is, I've got 22 acres I'm turning into botanical gardens. This is a trail that ends into the main garden area separate from my house, and I wanted to dress up the entrance to the trail a little bit. So I used some equipment to bring the stones around this existing lovely eastern red cedar tree. Not technically a cedar, I know, but we call them eastern red cedars. This is the tree that has the aromatic wood on the inside that you line closets with. But it was naturally growing here, volunteer, and it's a lovely tree. They are absolutely lovely trees. And so I kept it. I put the heavy boulders and the stones around it to mark where the road ends and the trail begins, and I'm just planting it. And one of the things I want to do here is plant it with shrubs. So I have these little golden chamacyparuses, which I'm going to plant. I've got 2 planted already. I think I'm going to move them. And then I have some Perfecto Mundo red azaleas that I'm going to plant as well. And these azaleas have been potted for a little too long. They've been in these pots for over a year. They're definitely going to be root bound, but you can still see that they are happy enough to bloom. If a plant's happy enough to bloom, it's pretty happy. Just again, it shows how azaleas are resilient. They can even be sitting in the same old pot for a year or more and be fine. They're getting a little leggy though. They're getting a little leggy, so we'll plant them, we'll get them bushy out. But one thing I want to point out is that these golden chamaecyparuses with the yellow foliage contrast very nicely, as you can see, with the red flowers on the azaleas. And that is something you always want to aim for in good garden design. You want to aim for contrast, and there are certain colors and certain things that contrast well with each other that make each other pop when used in the garden. Red and yellow are one such combination. If you plant something with burgundy foliage next to something with golden foliage, those two will pop more for being next to each other. If you plant something that has red flowers next to something that's yellow, it will make the red pop more and the yellow pop more. They just go really well together, red and yellow. Maybe that's why McDonald's is so popular. I don't know. But I'm going to do the red azaleas here. I could have done white. I could have done pink. I've got coral ones. I've got purple ones. I'm going to go with the red here because I want to get these golden chamaecyparuses, which will grow to 3 to 4 feet and really frame out this area, contrasted with something that will bloom. So stay tuned. I'm going to plant these things really quick, and we'll move on to other parts of the video. Well, I hope you've enjoyed watching my azalea video. A couple other things I wanted to show you. These here, these are red Perfecto Mundo azaleas. They've been in these pots for a little over a year, and they're little quart pots. And look, they are still alive. They're still blooming, and that just shows you how resilient and tank-like azaleas can be. A couple other things to wrap up the video I want to talk about. Azaleas are going to be hardy in zones 6 through 9. So that's everything from southern Michigan to northern Florida is going to be, generally speaking, your range. Now, urban areas to rural areas, that's going to change your zones a little bit. Higher elevations will too. But generally speaking, southern Michigan to northern Florida, you can grow azaleas. And they are native. They're native through this region of the southeast United States, and sometimes you can find them natively growing in forests around here. Again, they like it well-drained soil, shade or sun. Dappled shade, dappled sunlight is like where I like to plant them the most. I do feel like they will bloom more. They put on more blooms in the sun, which is typical for most flowering plants, that the sunlight really encourages blooming. You can really kind of set them and forget them. Once they are established, they will be fine. Now, if I took this and I planted this in the middle of a summer dry spell and didn't water it, it would die. It would die without supplemental watering. However, if I plant it now this time of year in the fall, plant it in the winter, and get it established through that first summer, that first growing season, at that point the azalea really is pretty much set it and forget it. You don't really need to take care of it too much. It will be fine. And again, they make great hedges, they make great focal points, they make great dramatic color things, dramatic color statements in the garden. They can, you get the newer varieties, and I only recommend the newer varieties. Buy the good genetics. You're investing for 20, 30, 40 years with these plants. They live a very long time. Buy the best genetics you can. Get the newest varieties. I like the Perfecto Mundo series a lot. You get those, and you'll have blooms in the spring and you'll have blooms in the fall, and they bloom for weeks on end. And in between the bloom periods, you'll still have the evergreen foliage, so they'll make a very nice border or a hedge that you can use as well. So I hope you liked watching and learning all about azaleas. I hope you know where to plant them in your yard now. You can go get some. There's links in bios, so you can buy them from me. Again, I'm Chris Beasley. I'm here. I'm building botanical gardens. Like and subscribe and follow along. We're going to continue to do garden posts, plant posts, construction posts, everything it takes to turn my 22 acres up here into botanical gardens. It's my 30-year plan. So follow along with me for the ride. Like and subscribe. Thank you so much.